On the opposite side of football's hypnotising joy is its agonising cruelty. A cruelty that was felt all over the world in the past few days. Sian Fryer felt it as her first Matildas start and maiden goal in green and gold fell through the cracks of the record books as the Tillies' final hit-outs before Paris was only listed as an international B fixture. Who knows, maybe we'll reconsider in 50 years' time. There's cruelty for Western United fans as they won't get to see Daniel Peña in their colours next season. Harry Kewell will feel it very shortly as he is soon to be sacked in Japan. Cruelty for Lionel Messi's ankle as the grapefruit that appeared to lie within it forced him to withdraw from a Copa America final marred by security issues only 2 years out from a World Cup on American soil. And whilst amassing absolutely zero sympathy from the rest of the footballing world, cruelty for England as a late Spanish winner extends football's travel visa by at least another 2 years on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast supported by Deploy Football. My name is Lachlan Avil, back in the host chair this week. I must say, first of all, a very big thank you to Jacob Stevens. He's done an exceptional job covering in for me. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you all at home enjoyed it too. But today I'm joined by Christian Montegan, who about 10 minutes ago, as he joined this group call for this episode, was listening to the Spanish national anthem with his hand on his heart. I told you not to go too early, but you couldn't help yourself, could you?
I was a converted Spaniard for 24 hours today, don't you worry. Literally, I was, I've been saying England, it would be an absolute nightmare if they ended up with the trophy. They didn't take it home, thankfully, so another 2-year wait for the Poms to take it home, so we'll take it.
Yes, of course, I do say football still hasn't come home after 58 years. The women did win the Euros a couple of years ago, but in terms of the men's team, it has been a very long wait. And Poletti, hello to you. I thought you were going to be an ally of mine tonight, but you've also rocked up wearing a Spanish kit. I don't know who I can trust anymore.
I mean, look, I'm just a crap stirrer, right? I want whatever is the funniest solution possible. And in this particular case, that's me pledging my allegiance to the Spanish. Although, if it wasn't for the bit, there's no way I'd be wearing this. There's a reason that this jersey, after purchasing it 4 years ago, has sat in my closet for the last 12 months. It's a little bit bittersweet. I noticed you mentioned you've got travel visa written here. Does that make England MasterCard? No.
No comment.
No. Jeez, give me at least a few minutes to warm back up again. All right. Well, of course, the Euros chat, we're going to stick to the end. Jacob Stevens isn't here today, but he has sent through a voice note, which I haven't listened to yet, so we'll listen to that live. I'm sure it'll be entertaining at the very least. But we're going to start with the Tillies, who are, of course, only 10 days away now from beginning their Olympic campaign. They had a final, somewhat competitive match against Canada in Marbella. The country listed here is redacted in my rundown. We'll have to catch up with that later. But they went down 2-1 to Canada. Apparently that joke went over Christian and Poletti's head. It is Spain, by the way. We're not talking about Spain.
So you didn't laugh at my joke. I don't laugh at your joke.
Fair enough. Both goals were defensive errors. Poor spill from Mackenzie Arnold and a defensive third pass gone wrong. Poletti, I'm not sure how much there is to read into this game. TG was saying that it was intentionally placed in terms of their training schedule at the end of a very hard training run. They wanted to simulate what it would be like to play a game in fatigued conditions. There was a myriad of substitutions, not exactly representative of a full 100% go at a top nation, but I guess it's another hit out, and now the players are set for Paris.
Yeah, it was marked as a B international, very much to allow that. Tony has said that this was essentially the perfect preparation for the Olympics. Regardless of the result, it's for those who are unaware, a B international essentially means that caps, goals, don't count towards the record books. Only those in A internationals do. And a lot of friendlies count as A internationals, but this being a B international did not. It means that more substitutions are allowed. Just the flexibility of the rules to essentially considered a training match. This is what this was. It was a training match. These things usually aren't broadcast. The match itself in Spain was behind closed doors. No fans in attendance. And had the Matildas not been a massive commercial juggernaut, in years past, this match would have been played without a broadcast itself. So I have, essentially, this match was set up for Tony Gustafsson to learn a few last-minute things before the Olympics and essentially have a competitive training run, simulate a match environment, playing under heavy legs and all those sorts of things. And, he said that it was everything he needed it to be. I'm paraphrasing there, but so it's, I think that, still good on Sian Fryer. Scored a goal, her first start for the Matildas.
Did she?
And then Winona Heatley got her first minutes for the Matildas, although it won't count in the record books. But what does count in the record books is a debut that we had over at Roundball Australia with Emma Burke providing the match report for this game. So you can head over to roundballaustralia.com.au and read that. Absolutely thrilled to have Burke as part of the team. Just hit on the pod a couple of times last season talking the dub, and great addition to the team here.
Yeah, absolutely, and you'll hear a little more of her as well as we go through to the next A-League Women's season. But Christian, it's a little bit of a controversial time to be talking about Matildas games that do or do not feature in the record books, isn't it? Sian Fryer gets her first start, gets a goal as well, doesn't count, unfortunately. But, of course, we look backwards. The reason for Fryer earning a start in this game was a late withdrawal for Caitlin Ford. There were a couple of other injury concerns as well. Steph Catley and Tegan Micah were also ruled out of participation in this game. Those are some very key figures, plus your backup goalie that's 10 days away from an Olympic Games tournament starting. It's not exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tegan Micah, we know Mackenzie Arnold's going to be starting in the Olympics, so that's not the massive concern. It's more Steph Catley and Caitlin Ford, obviously the two down that left-hand side. Probably the biggest concern would be Ford. We saw that ice pack, I think it was, on her upper leg pre-match. The cameras panned towards it. The commentators were hoping that it wasn't nothing too serious. We'll wait for the results. But to already miss out on Sam Kerr with that ACL injury, we're relying on players like Caitlin Ford up front who can provide that extra bit of creativity and productivity, efficiency to score those goals. Because obviously, Michelle Heyman's there. She's been called up. She's played the last few games, including the Olympic qualifiers. She put in a good shift, but it's players like Caitlin Ford who are really that big X factor that can turn a game on its head, essentially. So if she happens to miss perhaps the first couple of group games, that would be a massive blow, I feel, for the Matildas. If they've got any chance of getting out of the group, to be paired with Germany and the USA, we're going to have need all players available, at the top of their game. So, like you said, a few injury concerns there, but hopefully nothing too serious. But I guess it all goes back on the workload as well, which I saw a few comments in the media saying Tony Gustafsson has worked these players extremely hard, in the past couple of camps, and obviously coming off grueling seasons in the players' respective seasons. He's got to be careful about how he manages the workload and the training sessions, because with these Olympic Games coming up, it's 3 games in the space of not even a week, I think 7 days or something like that. So, in terms of that management and that structure, it's going to have to be really spot on.
Yeah, I mean, you'd imagine they would have a plan around this. There'll be an intense training period, then a break for recovery. So you'd imagine there wouldn't be a whole lot in this 10 days before the lead up to that first game. But, with a tournament that is condensed as it is, as you say, Christian, it's definitely something to be mindful of. I just feel, Poletti, those two outs in particular, Steph Catley and Caitlin Ford, we've talked plenty about the versatility of the squad, and you do actually have players that you can slap in different positions. But specifically those two, the Arsenal link up down the left-hand side, those two really are greater than the sum of their parts. Like, you put those two players on the pitch together, they just have a connection that you don't often find in international football. And without Sam Kerr up front, the captain, the leader, the generational goal scorer, you really do need players like Caitlin Ford and then Steph Catley backing her up.
Yeah, look, I think that, they'll both be fine come the opening game against Germany, and that's what they've been building towards is everything is towards that opening game against Germany on July on July 25 local time, July 26, 3 a.m. kickoff here in Australia. They've got a world-class Triple SM team, at the Matildas that, and Tony mentioned it in post-game press conferences.
Sorry. Triple SM? What does that mean?
Sports science and sports management.
Right, okay.
They've got, I was talking in the press conference after the match, every player was wearing a GPS tracker, which is pretty standard, but, it's monitoring every single number, every single bit of output that was coming out, players hitting certain targets and then getting substituted out of the game once they hit those targets, those sorts of things. So this was very much, very, very calculated, is essentially in the approach. And so I think that with everything being focused on that Germany game, it's why you didn't see the likes of Steph Catley. If that was, USA in the Olympics, probably takes the field. Same with Caitlin Ford, right? Like, I think it's about rehabbing. It's just making sure that everything's ready to go when it's ready to go, when, all the chocolates are on the line, essentially.
All right, sounds good. We're going to do a full preview of the Olympic women's football tournament next Tuesday. We're going to bring a special guest on as well for that, so stay tuned. But we'll leave it there with the Tillies for now.
Hey, Jacob.
Yeah, what's up?
When you're playing football, would you prefer to play with an old, gross, torn-away ball with a bunch of bumps on it, or a perfectly shaped, clean one that they use in international matches?
Well, I mean, the easy answer, the second one.
Well, you're in luck because Deploy Football are sponsoring this episode of the pod. Proudly Australian-owned and operated since 2012, they are one of only 2 Aussie brands to ever receive the FIFA Quality Pro license. That's the tippity top for footballs.
I mean, that is pretty good, but I mean, we've got the ball. There's still another problem.
What's that?
Well, I mean, with the season that Adelaide have just had, I don't really feel like wearing my United kit when I'm out there on the pitch.
That is very fair. But in that case, you can go and get your own custom kits from Deploy as well. Fully sublimated on just a 15-day turnaround with no lock-in contracts for clubs. You can even get your own custom footballs. They've got the largest range of program-specific footballs in the country.
Nice. Sounds to me like we need some gear for the pod.
That is a very good idea. We will have to get on to them about that.
Yeah, we should do that. It would be sick.
Deploy are proud partners of state federations all over the country and offer clubs and individuals the best value for money on footballs, teamwear and equipment. If you want to get the best for your club, head to Deploy and let them know we sent you.
All right, well, let's head to some transfer news in the world of Australian football. We're going to start internationally, though. As mentioned in the intro, Harry Kewell is set to be sacked as head coach of the Yokohama F. Marinos. This is being reported in Japanese media and confirmed by Australian local Sasha Pisani as well. It is potentially, we expect Tuesday will be the day that this is officially confirmed, so you may have heard about this as well by the time you're listening. The Marinos sit just 7 points above the relegation zone in J1 Christian, just a little over halfway through the season. They haven't performed amazingly, especially compared to the standards of the lofty Australians that have come before Kewell in the form of Kevin Muscat and Ange Postecoglou, but also drawing some eyes for his touchline behaviour, specifically in Japanese culture. It doesn't seem to be as approved of. He doesn't seem to be, loving his time over there in Japan too much, and it appears it might be coming to an abrupt end.
He's learning a suppression environment, isn't he? A lot of people question the appointment, obviously taking over from Kevin Muscat and then Ange Postecoglou, obviously a few years prior. So the feeling was another Australian taking over. There could be some success here following Muscat's and Postecoglou's blueprint on that Yokohama side. But I think that Champions League run to the final perhaps covered over a couple of cracks in Harry Kewell's coaching ability, perhaps, because in the league they haven't been good, have they? 7 points above the drop zone, not warming up to the fans, like you mentioned. Lucky a few sort of concerns on the touchline. You can tell he's under pressure in press conferences. He's sort of having a go at a few journalists. He just has to do the talking on the pitch and on the sideline if he's to, salvage his job, which obviously it looks very unlikely from all reports say. So in terms of his coaching ability, I mean, Poletti touched on it off podcast that he needs to start from scratch again, essentially at a lower club, perhaps in the A-League, we were saying even NPL, but I don't see him, stooping that low, to rectify his coaching career. It's going to have to start somewhere small and build his way back up, because in terms of his reputation, it's starting to deteriorate a bit, as sad it is to say, because yes, he was a great player in the past, but we've said it time and time again, that doesn't essentially mean that it's going to turn into becoming a great coach. There's so much more behind the scenes that you have to do tactically, management, preparing the team, all that camaraderie within the squad. So yeah, there's a lot of elements that go into it, and at the moment, Harry unfortunately just isn't living up to the hype at the moment.
No, he certainly isn't. And, for me, looking at this appointment, if it isn't going to happen now for Harry Kewell in his managerial career, to be honest, I don't see it happening at all. He's had chances. He failed. He then went to Scotland. He was an assistant under Ange for a little while. He had that tutelage, got the nod at Yokohama. We know how they like to appoint Australian coaches after their recent success. And this was his real opportunity to prove that he'd learnt from those early failings. And I think we can quite conclusively say that he has not done so. Christian, you pointed out the Champions League run. Of course, he took over at the beginning of the knockout stage, so he didn't have to deal with groups, which is a very high bar for progression. Kevin Muscat was that achievement. And then they've got lucky in a couple of knockout ties, including an extra time and penalty shootout round. So he doesn't really leave Yokohama with much success at all. And if a club is going to take a chance on Harry Kewell, I agree with Poletti. I don't even think the state the A-League is in right now, they wouldn't even go near him. So he'd probably have to look at something lower than that.
I mean, the advantage to, say, going to an A-League side or, maybe like an MLS, USL could be an option as well. These leagues don't have relegation. So he might have a chance to work through some of the issues. Like if you look at his coaching record, right? So he had 18 wins from 57 at Crawley Town, 31%. 3 and 15 at Notts County, 17 and 41 at Oldham Athletic, none at Barnet, and now 13 wins from 33 at Yokohama. Like 51 wins, 153 matches coached, 33%. Doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And you look at some of those clubs, 2 of them are in the National League, one of them's in League 2 in England. Like, it's not like he's been coaching the cream of the crop clubs, but he also should, I was saying this off air as well, like, for how good of a player he is, the fact that he's not a great manager may not necessarily be a reflection on him, because great players don't always make great managers. But something just doesn't seem to be right here, because someone who had his footballing ability, his football IQ, should be able to translate that into a managerial sense, or at the very least get the right assistant coaches around him to help him, bring that to the players. Like if you look at Wayne Gretzky, he was one of the greatest ice hockey players of all time. Absolute terrible coach. Like, and how much of that you could put down to him versus how much of that you could put down to it being the Arizona Coyotes, who no longer exist in the NHL. That's a debate for another day that we're not going to get into on this podcast. But the greats don't always make good coaches, and I think his time might have passed him by unless he's willing to take a massive step down. And I just think, not to put words in his mouth, but I think his ego might not be able to take that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. You look at his time spent under Ange. If you're going to learn as an assistant under Postecoglou and then go to Yokohama and do no better than 7 points above the relegation zone, I just don't think he has it. And that, as you say, he was a beautiful player. He's a wonderful player.
We have to remember he stepped into a different culture as well. He spent most of his coaching career in England, speaking the language, have to, that language barrier. And like you touched on, he's.
But you can say the same thing about Ange as well.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, even when he worked with Postecoglou at Celtic, Muscat brought Postecoglou's ideas over to Yokohama and didn't really change anything up in terms of systems and style of play. Whereas I think Harry is a bit more stubborn. He wants to do things his own way, and that's why he's not learning from his past mistakes. That's my personal opinion.
I would argue Ange Postecoglou is the most stubborn of them all.
But his system works there, and that was implemented perfectly at Yokohama.
So you can be stubborn if it works.
Bring at the back, anyone?
But his system worked at Yokohama, though.
I'm saying, are you allowed to be stubborn if it works then?
Well, to a certain degree, yeah, you can, if it's successful.
All right, let's move on. I'm sure we're going to debate this one as well, Christian. Matt Ryan, the rumour is a deal with AS Roma to be the backup keeper per Fabrizio Romano. So he's got the official here we go on this one. It's a 1-year deal with a 1-year option. It seems as if, Christian, that the Socceroos' number one keeper will be spending a little bit of time on the bench. And, of course, the interesting follow-up there is that Joe Gauci, who I think at least we consider to be Socceroos' number 2, is also sitting on the bench for Aston Villa at the moment. Perhaps the Socceroos don't have a starting club goalkeeper anymore.
Potentially. It's interesting because Roma were actually struggling for a number one goalkeeper before last season. They found Miles Spiller midway through last season. He got a few starts and he impressed, especially during that Europa League run. So, yeah, like you mentioned, Ryan, if the move eventuates, he'll be the backup keeper and he'll become the second Socceroo behind John Aloisi to play in 3 of the leagues in La Liga, Serie A and the Premier League, which is obviously an incredible feat. But yeah, in terms of, starting for the Socceroos, you've got a couple of question marks where you're not getting goalkeepers at the highest level playing first team regular football. And that surely has to be a concern for Graham Arnold moving forward for these World Cup qualifiers and for the 2026 World Cup when it comes around, if we qualify. So, yeah, in terms of the move itself, it's if a chance, comes by with an injury, if Spiller does, get injured, for example, and the opportunity arises for him to get that starting spot, that'd obviously be incredible for him. They're not playing Champions League football this season. They'll be back in the Europa League, but I mean, to play a few games in Serie A to gain that, I know he's experienced and he's a veteran at 32 years of age, but to get that new culture and that new environment, I guess, under his belt, that wouldn't do him a whole world of bad, would it? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he does get a few minutes, even in a couple of cup games. But, again, it's going to be difficult decisions ahead for Arnold.
Yeah, and I mean, 32 years old, as you say, that's almost peak age for a goalkeeper, you'd say. Add 4 or 5 on for what you consider an outfield player at 27, 28. So these are kind of his peak years, Poletti, and he has been bouncing around between clubs. He left Brighton, had a spell at Arsenal for a little bit, has settled at AZ Alkmaar where he performed quite well, but they have this young up-and-coming goalkeeper coming through, so contract negotiations struggled a little bit. There was one in the table at the end of the day, but he chose to decline it, and now he's gone to Roma to what appears to be a number 2 position. I just have a little bit of feeling about Matty Ryan, this unsettled period in the last 3-4 years. It feels like it's being a little bit wasted.
Yeah, I think he just needs to find a club and stick with it. Like, and I know that's easier said than done, but...
It's not always his choice.
No, I said I understand that, but it is his choice to stay in Europe. And I'm not necessarily saying come back to the A-League. I mean, MLS is rising in the rankings in terms of league quality around the world. That could be an option. There's plenty of, surely a team in Asia might be willing to give him a crack. Like, I know that, as a foreign player, there are limits to the amount of visa signings you can have in your squads. But he's a starting international goalkeeper. You find me a club, apologies. You find me a club that doesn't want a starting international quality goalkeeper. That just seems like a no-brainer if you're trying to build out from the back. Is a top quality number 1 and let him run. Now, that being said, I would argue that the goalkeeper position is, like, of all the positions in the football field, is the one position where you don't necessarily need match minutes to keep your fitness up, to keep your strengths up, because you're essentially going through all those sorts of things in training, right? You're saving goals, shooting practice, all that fun stuff. You're getting all your reps in throughout the week, and the 90 minutes is the 90 minutes. It's not that match fitness, but at the same time, you're still doing so much throughout the week. Whereas if you look at someone like a Harry Suter, for example, who's Graham Arnold has been on the record as saying, you need to move somewhere else if you want to be part of the setup. You can do all those sorts of things as a defender in training, but you need that 90 minutes as an outfield player, whereas I feel it's less crucial as a goalkeeper just because of how many reps that you put in training that are essentially mini match simulations in training just because of the different skill set and the dynamics that a keeper needs compared to an outfield player.
Yeah, well, whichever way you fall on that argument of does the keeper need match minutes, and I agree that it's definitely less so than an outfield player, absolutely. We're definitely going to find out, with Australia in the next year or so, because it appears that Matt Ryan and Joe Gauci won't be playing regular.
If I'm Joe Gauci, though, I'd be requesting to my agent to get a loan move, because to see Matt, you don't reckon? To not get some minutes, some first team minutes, and to potentially further rival Ryan for the number one spot for Australia, you wouldn't do that.
No, because Joe Gauci isn't interested in getting the Socceroos shirt for a year and getting a quick loan. He's interested in learning from the people at Aston Villa, who are an incredible football club. They're playing Champions League football, don't forget. So it's an amazing club. I'm sure the learning opportunities are massive, and he wants to grab that shirt for the next 10 years, not just the next 12 months.
I was going to say, if you want to look at it, we've just discussed the notion of Matty Ryan jumping around. If Joe Gauci's asking for a loan, it might work for 1 year, but then what happens? There's a youngster in the Villa Academy who steps up, takes his place as a number 2 goalkeeper, and then, he can't get back in, and then he's got to bounce around for the next 3, 4, 5 years as well, around whatever club that'll give him a 12-month contract, and we're having the same conversation again?
Yeah, I was just throwing the possibility out there.
No, look, it's a podcast. We need to win points, so well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying, I just think it would end up in a very similar situation to Matt Ryan, and, come 2028, we'll be having the same discussion again.
Because I'm on a slight different opinion of you, Poletti, that I think the goalkeeper does need those senior minutes. I know training, it's not much of a difference in terms of match fitness, but you can't completely disregard how important it is to get those minutes under your belt. Compared.
I didn't disregard those minutes. Don't put words in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, I know, but you were sort of alluding to that in terms of the fitness part of it. Because like you said, Graham Arnold's clearly come out and said, in past years that Ryan has to, make a move and start. So if he wants to play for the Socceroos, but yeah, we'll see.
I will say, if I had one complaint of Jacob's hosting during my couple of weeks away, is that he let Christian get away with some very interesting statements and opinions. So I'm glad he's finally getting some pushback on this stuff. But you're right, Poletti, it does cause
keep it coming.
Yeah, exactly. It makes for some interesting debate, which we're all for. Let's come back to the A-League, and Daniel Pena will not return to Western United. He'll move a little closer to home, I believe in Portugal, for family reasons. We know that his wife, Larissa, was diagnosed with cancer during his time in Korea. They were apart for 7 months. The story of their, being reunited during the last A-League season, it's clear to see how much his family means to him, Poletti. I guess all we can say is just best of luck for his future. He's doing what he has to do. Muted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're looking at it as very much, what this is, and that is just a family move. This is nothing about him wanting to leave Australia. It's about, completely about family. And I don't think you'll find any proper football fan who would knock him for that, regardless of what it means for their club. In this case, Western United. Like, I don't think you'll find any fans knocking him for making the decision to go look after his family. And so, yeah, I just wish him all the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive loss, though, Christian. What an exciting player he was, particularly in the back end of that last A-League season.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell the talent was on full display. Great leader as well on the pitch. He was a real focal point for Western United, I guess. Arguably one of the best players in the league. You can tell his IQ was just off the charts. He made a decision what he was going to do 5 seconds before he received the ball. He was just that sort of player that had so much knowledge of the game and his skill set and the talent he displayed. It was brilliant to watch from an A-League perspective and a Western United perspective, which obviously now they're going to really miss heading into the new season. They'll have to replace that big void. John Alissi will have to look at potentially a couple of players to sign and for that attacking third role. But yeah, I mean, best of luck, like Poletti said, and wish him well.
An interesting stat around this, the name of his Brazilian club is slipping my mind, but I believe that this loan to the Portuguese side is something like his 10th loan from one club outward, which is ridiculous. I'm not entirely sure about the reasons behind that, but quite
Does
a
he play for
staggering
Chelsea?
number. No, he does not play for Chelsea. But yeah, very intriguing. Now, the next sign that we're going to talk about, I love this. This has got the A-League Central Coast Mariners blueprint written all over it. 4-cap Northern Ireland defensive midfielder Alfie McCalmont has signed for the Central Coast, part of Carlisle's League 2 promotion campaign in 22-23. Last season made 31 league appearances, mostly from the bench in League 1. Follows Ryan Edmondson, who also made the same transfer back in January. Similarly, has history with Mark Jackson and Dennis Schofield from time at the Leeds Academy. Christian, 24 years old, elite level academy player, dropped down the ranks a little bit since. That is straight out of the Mariners playbook.
Yeah, definitely is. With the podcast last week with Jacob, I was mentioning to him that sometimes with these foreign players coming across, you don't know what to expect until you see, they play a few games to see what they're really made of. But from all accounts, it's already had history with Mark Jackson. Abroad, surely Jackson, understands his game thoroughly, knows his skill sets, knows his qualities that he can bring to this Mariners setup, which is obviously lost a couple of players, one being Josh Nisbet, who was a key part, obviously, to that Mariners success last season, the treble win. So, it's worked in the past for the Mariners. Their scouting system and networking has been outstanding. So, hopefully he can settle in well. They'll need another quick start, I think, with the few departures that have experience. But again, hopefully it does work out for them.
Poletti, it just says so much about the history of the Mariners' transfer activity over the past few years that I can sit here knowing absolutely nothing about this bloke, but I can still sit here being pretty confident that he's going to be a solid player in the league next year.
Yeah, absolutely. It as you said, it just shows everything they've done over the last couple of years, and maybe he'll be able to come in. He'll be able to help, bring up the team. Essentially, even if he's not playing or starting every single week, and it might help them bring through some more of the next generations of players, of Australian players, that they can start getting some more transfer fees for, and the system repeats.
Absolutely, and 24 years old, holds plenty of potential transfer value himself as well, with a big season in the Asian Champions League Elite coming up, which the draw isn't too far away as well, just by the way. The final one that we're going to talk about, I believe, Christian, you might have mentioned the rumours about this last week, but Finn Sermon has officially left Wellington Phoenix to join the MLS. A couple of really crucial outgoings, of course, with Ben Old as well from Wellington Phoenix, Oxford Zavada. There's starting to be some rather big holes in that Phoenix outfit.
Yeah, there is. They brought in Marco Rojas, confirmed last week, so that's one big in, I think, for them to fill the void of Ben Old out on that wing. But I was saying to Jacob last week that potentially Italiano has to change, not his system, I guess, but a player like Rojas who might not do the defensive work and track back as much as a Ben Old, for example, that he might have a different role up in that attacking third. So. A couple of pieces have to be changed around, I think, for the next season, pending, the signings that they do bring into the club. But for Finn Sermon to make that move to the MLS, obviously, new experience for him, new adventure, new environment. I'll be keen to, I guess, follow his journey and see if he can carry that success from the Phoenix on abroad in the States.
Yeah, Poletti, I'm already excited to see how the Phoenix shape up next season. I know that they're going to evolve in some way. We get to see how it is. But Finn Sermon to the MLS, that move in isolation. It's interesting that America is becoming somewhat of a destination league now.
It's as I've mentioned earlier in the podcast. We've talked a lot about MLS today, more than I think we ever have in the history of the podcast prior to this.
It's for our American listeners.
have a few.
MLS is a league that is on the rise in terms of its quality and its reputation. We've seen a lot of in the past, it was if European players weren't coming out here for a payday, they were going to MLS for a payday because MLS had a little bit more money than what the A-Leagues did. But it's really grown into this hotbed for young American talent to get transfers into Europe. But not just that, you've got so many different South American and Central American players as well, all building to create this massive league that has a lot of high-quality talent that's on the radars of a lot of clubs and leagues in Europe for a reason in terms of where we can get the next talent, get our next talent, a lot of talented players from. And so I think that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, this is a move that might have signaled dire straits. But now I think this is a genuine move that's only going to help improve its quality.
Yep, and not the first move we've seen this summer from A-League to MLS either. Jake Girdwood-Reich from Sydney. So a few Aussies in America now will be interesting to see. But we are going to stay in the USA, and for unfortunate reasons, because there were distressing scenes at the final of the Copa America as security issues drag a dark cloud over the impending American World Cup in 2 years' time. Now, most of this is still largely speculation. Security appear to have lost control of at least one gate at Hard Rock Arena where the final was being played between Argentina and Colombia. Thousands of fans who didn't have tickets streamed through overcrowded entry passages by brute force. We've seen video of this circulating around social media. Fans climbing fences. There's even some footage of fans allegedly crawling through air ducts to gain access to the stadium. The obvious safety and security concerns postponed the game by over an hour. And Christian, the real takeaway, you're supposed to host a World Cup in 2 years' time. This really cannot be happening. We don't want Australian supporters caught up in anything like this.
Yeah, right. And there were concerns last week, the game with Colombia and Uruguay. A few of the Uruguayan players went up into the stands with the lack of security. So those security concerns have always been there, throughout the whole tournament, which has been a real worry, like you said, with the World Cup coming up in less than 2 years' time. 3 years ago at the Euros, we had the same situation with England fans barging through the gates at Wembley Stadium. So it's a common theme, really, in the past few years, unfortunately. We know South Americans are really passionate about their football, but sometimes they can take it to extreme heights, and I don't think Americans have, I guess, come to terms with their culture and understood, the extent of these rivalries and how far they can go. We saw children crying, families torn apart. In some of the video footage I was seeing today, which you just don't want to see that. It's football. At the end of the day, it's a Copa America final. We're there for the football. 75-minute delay for what? For people getting into a stadium without tickets. So the security, it's got to be better. But it's a CONMEBOL run event. So I think the US Federation have been, copying a bit of slack, but at the end of the day, it has been up to CONMEBOL, who are the South American Federation, who look after the 10 nations in South America. So they are the ones who are running this tournament. For the World Cup, obviously, it's going to be a FIFA-run event. So they're going to have to do a lot of work to get the security in check. The pitches have been a disaster from all accounts. We've seen players and coaches argue about the state of the pitches, the organisation throughout the tournament. So, a lot's going to have to change in the next couple of years to, align for a good tournament.
Yeah, so the incident that Christian's referring to regarding Uruguay, this happened after the semi-final where they lost against Colombia. Multiple players, including Liverpool striker Darwin Núñez, got into physical confrontations with Colombian fans after, according to their coach Marcelo Bielsa, the players felt compelled to jump up into the stands and defend their own families, so their wives, their children, from physical violence, which is the reality of the situation that they were appearing to deal with. Poletti, it's just horrible to think about. And Bielsa went on this massive rant after their elimination, not their final game because they had the playoff, but lost in the semi-finals. The security was obviously a major issue, but pitch conditions, training grounds, and other organisational issues Christian does make a very good point. This is a CONMEBOL event, not a FIFA event, but the World Cup is happening in these same places. These kind of issues cannot happen again.
And I don't think they will. Someone, multiple people actually, I should say, I saw raise the point on Twitter today. If you look at the stadium in Miami, this is a stadium that runs, Taylor Swift concerts, that runs NFL games every season, runs a ton of college football games every season that all sell out the stadium, and they didn't have these issues. They don't have these issues week in, week out, year in, year out. This is apparently the first time there's been an issue like that at this stadium. I think you might just have to lay the blame with CONMEBOL. I'm not. I think, but we also know the difference between a FIFA run event and an AFC event, and you just have to look at Australia. The regulations were vastly different for the FIFA Women's World Cup than they were for the AFC Asian Cup that was here in 2015. It's two different organizations running things, and the standards are a lot higher, the standards are a lot stricter, and there's so many demands in place, particularly for a Men's World Cup. I don't think there'll be an issue in that respect. I worry about, and as I've raised these points for a while, I worry about a number of other issues when it comes to the United States of America and hosting a World Cup. I raised these same issues with Qatar. I've raised them with Russia. I think that it is. I know FIFA won't. I think they should move the tournament. I don't think it will be safe for a lot of people to attend said tournament. But that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, the reality is the tournament will not get moved. That is just simply won't happen. Look, there are unfortunate circumstances. We hope everyone is okay. But apart from that, news is still coming out. Christian, when the game did eventually get underway, Argentina needed extra time to take down Colombia 1-0. Thanks to Lautaro Martinez, the world champions become back-to-back Copa champions. But they didn't do it with Messi on the pitch, at least in the final stages. He had to be subbed off midway through the second half, if I'm not mistaken, due to a very nasty ankle injury. It did not look pretty at all.
Yeah, it was after the 65th minute he was forced to get subbed off. The cameras pointed to his ankle all swelled up and looked a pretty nasty injury. So, yeah, not pretty at all. But to end up getting that win, without their talisman, playing that 120 minutes is a real credit to Argentina and how far they've grown as a group to not just depend on Messi, because let's not forget, Messi has had the best tournament this Copa America. There's a lot of other individuals who have sort of had to carry this team, and past criticisms of Argentina before the last World Cup were, if Messi doesn't perform, then who steps up? It's always, if Messi doesn't do something magical, then, where are the goals going to come from? Where's the creativity? So from that perspective, I think that's a real positive to take out for Argentina in this tournament. Like you said, Lautaro Martinez, outstanding season for Inter Milan in Serie A, gets the winning goal in extra time, which I thought that extra 30-minute period was more entertaining than the 90 minutes. It was end-to-end. I think both teams didn't want penalties. They just wanted to take the win. It was exciting from that aspect, because the 90 minutes was, sad to say, a bit dull. Not much really happening. Not many too clear-cut opportunities for both teams. But yeah, like I said, that extra time period really made up for that. I think Argentina well-deserved winners in the end.
There's a very interesting point you make about neither team wanting penalties. This is a massive generalisation. It's not true for every team. But if you were just to think about England and Spain 0-0 in the 60th minute mark, you just think high possession, numbers behind the ball, well structured, let's grind it out. Where you flip to Copa America, Argentina, Colombia, you just think, let's fling players forward, let's just go for it and try to score goals. It probably represents the two tournaments pretty well. But Poletti, you've been, you've made no qualms about the fact that you're on team sleep during this whole international tournament period. The game was scheduled to kick off at 10. It went to over 11 o'clock. Surely you were awake for this one and saw a little bit of the game.
I was. I watched the entire 120 minutes. It was a very good goal by Lautaro Martinez. But honestly, I do have to echo Christian's thoughts. By the end of it, I'm just thinking no, can we just go straight to penalties the quarters and the semis? I can't sit through another 30 minutes of this. No. I'm not sitting at home on a Monday morning watching football to suffer through this. Like it was like the highlight of regulation time was Shakira. That was the highlight of the first 90 minutes in a 25-minute halftime, which I felt incredibly uneasy about because I'm watching a football game and it feels like it's the Super Bowl, and I don't like it, but it was still the highlight of the 90 minutes. That tells you everything you need to know about that game.
Well,
it's the American culture.
It is the American culture. She's now done the halftime performance of Copa. She's done a South African anthem for a World Cup in South Africa. Well, in Africa. Maybe we have to get her for an AFC tournament. Just to round out, get the whole globe going with Shakira.
No, hang on. I wonder if the APL has money for a new theme song.
I'd ponder probably not.
I was going to mention as well.
These lyrics might sound nice in the future.
As well with the extra time debate, I think it's a pretty good topic of discussion, with the World Cup, because obviously the massive workload now with the players. Do we just scrap extra time and go straight to penalties for the whole tournament? We know the Club World Cup, that new tournament's going to come in next season. More games for the players, not enough rest. I think it's just inevitable that one day it's going to eventuate where there's going to be no extra time and it's going to go straight to penalties just for players to recover better.
It's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but maybe one of the concessions FIFA makes with this expanded calendar is that we just don't have extra time anymore.
And the 48 teams of the World Cup as well. More teams, more games.
It's one more game per team, right?
I thought it was one less game. I thought it was one less game per team. Oh, sorry, in the group stage. But because you've got because I thought weren't they going to do 16 groups of 3 or something, 2 games each?
No. So it's groups of 4. It is.
Yep. Okay, so it's going to be 12 groups of 4. Okay, cool. Never mind. I will withdraw my comment.
That was a consideration, but I think it was. Was it perhaps after the Russia World Cup, or maybe it was Qatar? Anyway, they're talking. No, the group stage is actually pretty good as it is, and we're just going to add on around a 32 as well. All right, here we go. Christian, get your smile on. Spain has defeated England in the final of Euro 2024. Let's take some time to compliment Spain before the inevitable drool rolls on. Played 7, won 7. They were by far the best team at the tournament. Rodri was awarded Best Player. Lamine Yamal, Best Young Player. What a sensational burst he has had onto the international scene. Of course, he's been a regular for Barcelona this season, so plenty of people already know his name, but turned 17 during the tournament. Absolute wonder kid. It's insane. But Christian, it wasn't just possession ball either, as we feared it might be pre-tournament. They hurt teams in many different ways, and they were just too good.
Yeah, well-deserved winners. I think football's won today. If you're not an English supporter, even English supporters, I saw a lot of people saying Spain deserved it. To their credit, they were outstanding the whole tournament. I tipped them. Once again, I'll put that out there. My only prediction I've got right this year, I reckon. Unfortunately, it doesn't count towards any points. But no, they were tremendous. I think that midfield trio, Pedri, Rodri, and Fabian Ruiz in particular, even when Pedri went down in that quarterfinal, Dani Olmo comes in. They've got so much depth. And I think one of the concerns was up front where, in previous Spain eras, where are the goals coming from? They've got so much possession, so much tiki-taka football, but there's no end product. And that was the issue at the last Euros as well, where they fell short to Italy. But this time around, 2 exciting youngsters in Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal. Yamal, like you mentioned, winning Young Player of the Tournament, Rodri Player of the Tournament. They had so many weapons and outlets, exciting, entertaining football, where the Euros were crying out for that, really, because probably you could add Germany to the list of, exciting teams, but besides that, it was pretty boring, to be honest. So from that perspective, it's good that they won it. Let's see if they can carry over this momentum for the next World Cup.
All right, here we go. I have a voice note from Jacob here. It's about 6 minutes long. I can't promise all of it's going to make the cut, but I haven't listened to it. Let's see how he feels about. Yeah, let's see how he feels about England's loss this morning.
where do I even start with that? Yeah, another final, another loss for England. Not particularly good for those of us that were supporting England. I mean, credit to Spain, they were the better team on the day, and across the tournament they've been probably the best team in the whole tournament as well. But it's just 58 years now, and just not even felt like getting. I mean, the Italy one obviously last time out went to penalties, but this one, it almost felt worse because it was like we weren't even in the game for most of it. And with the talent that the team has, that should never be the case. This is why I just can't get enthusiastic about this team. It just doesn't seem to matter who's on the pitch, who the coach or the manager is. Just destined to never win anything ever again. I don't know, maybe there's some sort of curse. I don't know what it might be, but we've got to figure it out, because this is just... It put your money on England being kicked out in the final next Euros as well. I'm sure I'm sure it's going to happen, and you'd get a good return for it. So, but no, really disappointing. And just trying to keep excited for this team is a difficult thing to do. And there were moments in the game as well where it looked like maybe we were going to get something going and get something together, but it just was the same old. And again, Southgate, I don't know what he's got on the FA to keep him in that job, but it must be pretty substantial, because I mean, he made an earlier substitution than he normally would, but then left it after that and didn't make any afterwards, until there were 2 minutes left to go, and he brought Tony on. And what sort of an impact is a player supposed to have in that shorter space of time? He kept Walker on the pitch, who has been England's worst player all tournament. I mean, the only City player who wasn't a complete disgrace for England was John Stones, but he didn't have a particularly good game this time out. But Walker was awful. He was arguably responsible for both goals that England conceded. Foden, again, absolutely nowhere, completely invisible, and a complete waste of space. Harry Kane did nothing. Who's going to take accountability for this? Because it's not going to be the players, because they're going to go back to their clubs and they're going to perform well, and they're going to win golden boots, and they're going to win trophies. It's not going to be Southgate, because he's got the backing of the FA board. Who's going to step up and say, we've come close too many times now, something needs to change for us to go all the way and actually win it. Because it's getting ridiculous now, and I'm sure Christian will have a lot to say about England, and I'll probably agree with a lot of what he'll say, but it just sucks. And I don't know, this is, like I said, this is why I'm never optimistic about England. I know Lockie told me to be more optimistic heading into these Euros, and I wasn't, and my pessimism has paid off. It's paid dividends, and I've been proven right yet again. But it's just more of the same for England, I guess. And heading into the next World Cup cycle now really needs a refresh. Harry Kane was out there looking like he was 40 years old, and he's only 30. There's a lot of changes that need to be made to this side, obviously tactically, but also I think in terms of the players that are on the pitch, because if the ones that you're normally relying on aren't out there doing what they need to do, and you're alienating some of the best players from your squad, you need to make changes. And I think that it's going to be a case of either England can just sort of stick with it because, hey, it's gotten them this far and that's better than it's happened in the past, or they can go, well, no, we're going to be serious about actually winning something, and put some effort into actually do that, because there is absolutely no reason why, especially in this Euros with the easy side of the draw. Spain was the only difficult game that they actually really had, and even then the Spanish didn't look excellent. They didn't look as good as they have done the rest of the tournament, right? It's a missed opportunity again. Couldn't finish off penalties against Italy. Harry Kane missed that chance against France in the World Cup when it looked like it was probably another easy run to the final. Couldn't just do anything against Spain here. Another international tournament of disappointment, and it is slightly more disappointing, these sorts of losses, than what would happen to England in the past, where they'd get knocked out in the group stages, or maybe just sort of go out without much of a fight in the round of 16, because everybody knew that was going to be the case. But now there's an expectation that we're actually going to play well and we're going to try and win. But we get to that final hurdle and just, rather than jump over it, we just run into it. And gets a bit frustrating, I suppose, as a supporter. But what can you do? That's international football for you. And now we've got to wait 2 years to be let down again. And honestly, I'm predicting an absolute implosion in America for England. I don't think they'll perform well at all, but that's something we'll discuss obviously at another time, I'm sure. But yeah, just another early morning, another disappointing game of football, and a really disappointing result as well. And I then had to go and work all day afterwards as well, which it didn't really help my mood much. But that's life.
He certainly cuts a desolate figure, doesn't he, Christian?
No, but what he said was right, though. I mean, yeah, cue the disappointment. Yeah, he was pessimistic throughout the whole tournament. The opposite to you, Lockie. You were trying to be confident, trying to instill a bit of hope that England could go all the way. But it's not a talent issue with England. They've got the depth, they've got the talent. It's a coaching issue. It's a systematic issue where, Southgate's substitutions, his tactics, he didn't know his best team throughout this whole tournament. And that's what would sting England fans, I think. Because that Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment didn't work. You're experimenting during a tournament where you should be able to know what's your best 11. I know there were a couple of injuries that he had to deal with. Luke Shaw was the example. Left back Trippier had to fill in there. He didn't have the best tournament. But, Harry Kane, for example, he was lackluster this whole tournament. He looked extremely unfit. Jacob mentioned he was 40 years old. I mean, he's got a point. I mean, he played like it, to be fair. A lack of movement, off the ball, didn't really present. And he can only be blamed. And, the Southgate look back on that and say, okay, I should have maybe taken the risk and played, someone like an Ollie Watkins who can be a bit more dynamic from the get-go instead of waiting, 60-odd minutes to make that change. It's a combination of factors, really. The big question now is Southgate going to stay on until that World Cup? Because I know there's going to be a lot of fans thinking, dreading that possibility that he's going to be staying on. I think that'd be the worst case scenario if you're an English supporter.
Yeah, look, I disagree with a lot of the arguments you two make. I mean, you talk about why is he experimenting with the team. He hasn't been. It's been an extremely settled 11. You throw the idea out there of, should he have benched Harry Kane, England's all-time best goal scorer?
But he hasn't performed, though. He hasn't performed.
Yeah, so you want to then go experiment with Ollie Watkins? I know he scored a really good goal.
But it was clear from the outset this whole tournament that he wasn't fit. You can't just magically click your fingers and go, okay, it's gonna pan out well one game. I know you take those risks with a high-quality striker like Kane. He's arguably the best number 9 in the world, and you take that risk. But at the same time, it also takes a lot of courage to say, mate, you haven't had the best tournament. I've got players on the bench who can make more of an impact early in the game when we need it. And yeah.
No, I just disagree that there's anyone that had a better chance of making an impact. Like, yeah, you're throwing out Kane, but Ollie Watkins hasn't proved that he can do it for 90 minutes. Ivan Toney hasn't proved that he can do it for 90 minutes. They've had moments, but nothing more than that. And, Kane, ironically, goes home with another golden boot. He scored 3. That's equal to about 5 other players, and he gets another reward in his pocket. So, look, I understand that I tend to be on the more sympathetic side of most of these managerial conversations, but you look at Southgate's CV and you see 2 European finals, you see a World Cup semi-final, you see the quarterfinal to France, like Harry Kane missed penalty, the shootout against Italy, a late Spanish winner here.
But that's the wrong mentality that the federation gain towards. Because do you want to make finals or do you want to win trophies? Because
you can't guarantee wins though. You're gonna get to
but it's because of Southgate. It's because of 2 things. You've had a lot of easy draws. You have to admit to get to the final. I mean, you got knocked out quarters to France. At the last World Cup, you got an easy draw for the last Euros. This Euros, you're on the easier side of the bracket. 2018 was the same thing as well. So that's one
Germany
aspect.
in the quarters?
They weren't the best version of Germany. You've got to be honest.
Okay, all right.
They weren't. They weren't. Lachlan. They weren't. And the other part of
you
it
know
is
what?
that Southgate's coaching.
I've
Southgate's
listened.
coaching's the other part. Italy, they reverted back to defending after the 1-0 lead. It's happened time and time again where they fall back into the same habits where a different coach, like Spain, for example, today, once they went 1-0 up, they didn't think, oh, okay, we're going to sit back and defend this lead. No, they went out to get a second. They went out to get a third goal. They kept attacking. They kept the initiative up. Southgate he's not it. I'm sorry, he's not it. You can tell by the decisions he makes with the substitutions. If you don't want to win trophies, that's fine. I'm not complaining. I want him to stay on, but it's not. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's not.
When it comes down to it,
I've listened to this for long enough. I'm sorry. I've got to actually say something here. This is simply English delusional. If I can get the word I'm looking for, all right. Delusionalism of the results and expectations, because every time a tournament comes around, it's coming home. Home where? There's no home of football. It's a world game. We've clearly established this.
The sport.
Hold on. We've clearly established that football is the world game. It doesn't have a home, right? We've established that. Now, I can only speak as an Australian here. Their last 8 tournaments. Runners up, round of 16, quarterfinals, that's the Euros. They didn't qualify in 2008. Quarterfinals, 4th place, group stage, round of 16. Last 4, so first for the last 4 at the Euros, last 4 at the World Cup. Australia would kill for a record like that. 90% of countries that participate in these tournaments would do unspeakable things to have records like that. But for England, it's not good enough. For England, we got to sack the coach. We got to do this. We got to do that. I know the expectations are a little bit higher, but there's 90% of countries would, do unspeakable things to have records like this at major tournaments without a trophy.
It's a different team.
It's a different scenario.
I just think that these delusional English fans, I think everything just needs to calm down a few notches. Right. That's all I'm saying.
First of all, let's not pretend that there aren't fans of other countries that want their team to win trophies. The idea that it's just the English that get behind their team and
they're the most vocal about it. That's idiotic. The problem.
No, I'm sorry, but pretending that other fans don't want their team to win is silly. But England do have an expectation because they do have quality players. They have the football history. I'm sorry. Football was made in the UK. That is the home of football. And it's been, by the time we get to the US, it's going to be the same amount of time since the song was written than the period of misery that the song was written about. 30 years either side. It's going to be 6 decades since England's last major trophy when we get to the US. The fact that such a big, proud, quality footballing nation has not won a trophy in that amount of time is a tragedy, first of all. I want to go back to Southgate because it's ridiculous, and I'm a firm believer that you cannot enter a major tournament, no matter how strong your team is, with more than a 35-40% chance of winning the whole thing. You just can't. By the time you get to the knockout stage, you have to play 4. The next World Cup, it's going to be 5 knockout games of football. 90 minutes where absolutely anything can happen. And regardless of how many good players you have, at the end of the day, it's 11 v 11 and you can't guarantee a win every time. And Southgate has consistently got his team deep in tournaments, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. Football remembers the winners. They don't remember the losers. Southgate has been a terrific manager for England, and unfortunately, he's going to be forgotten.
Okay, I'll add in that Southgate's done a great job in... Before he came in, they were, like Poletti touched on those results, they were dire. You got knocked out to Iceland in the knockouts at the Euro 2016. So Southgate's done well to bring the team together, to bring his ideas across, to a certain extent. But my feeling is that his ceiling, he's reached that. And I think and the problem is as well, the FA are going to bring in a manager who's, they're going to be on their good books, like Southgate, where, it's an Englishman. He's been with the youth setups before. someone that might not challenge their opinions and what they want. You've got to take a different approach. You've got to try something different.
Harry Kewell?
Yeah, Southgate's done. No, not Harry Kewell. No, but Southgate's done well to get him to this spot. I did mention, they've had easy draws in the past, and yes, you're right, Lockie, it's a knockout tournament. Anything can happen, but you mentioned it, Lockie. They've got a talented group. The expectations are bigger. They're much higher. They were favourites, outright favourites coming to this tournament to win it.
And they got to the final.
And I was going to say, they've made the final, but it's his coaching as well that's letting him back. They were atrocious this tournament, Lockie. You cannot sit here and say, you can say, oh yeah, okay, it was boring to watch, but it got them to the final. Yeah, okay, but if it was for a Bellingham last-minute bicycle kick goal against Slovakia, can you imagine the outrage? So it's just these little moments, but at the end of the day, it's like England's playing great football and they're not getting the results. He's not getting the best out of the players.
But you can say that about every team. You give me one example of a team that has gone and comprehensively beaten every single opponent and just won a major tournament. Spain
not
get
for every game.
Like the last 5 minutes of the game, they get an equaliser. Southgate was a couple of penalty kicks away from being just the second English manager to ever win a major trophy in history. He is close to becoming one of the most influential English football people of all time, but instead he's going to be remembered as a joke. That's what it is.
You watch more England games than me. Can you honestly sit here and tell me that you can see a clear identity, a clear structure about Southgate's football?
The structure is sit back, don't concede goals, and let's hope we get it one later.
You're happy with that, and let's just hope. That's and you're happy with that.
I'm not saying it's an ideal style of football or something pretty to watch, but we talk about this all the time, specifically with the Socceroos as well, about the style of play, about building towards something. Well, guess what? When you get to international tournaments, that's it. You're not building to anything anymore. And Southgate has consistently got deep in tournaments. And at that point, volatility is going to do its work. And occasionally people don't win things. And that's just the way the game is.
We know where this stems from. This stems from his clear biasness with his Italian ancestry. If this was Antonio Conte or Roberto Mancini putting this out for the Azzurri, we wouldn't hear the end of how great the Italians are.
It's not. You know what the difference is? Conte in Euro 2016, Italy had one of the worst teams in history. You look back on that team, atrocious. Got to the quarterfinals, lost to Germany on penalties. But he got the best out of that group. England's completely different. They've got, arguably on paper, the most talented squad. And yet they're playing that type of football with limited ideas. And a coach who I think's a bit out of his depth. And that's my argument.
But the players can't get the best out of the players. We don't even see them get the best out of themselves at Clubland anymore. What I'm saying is that at some point, it's not on the coach. It becomes on the players. I know that players get hamstrung by the systems that they're told to play by the coaching staff at some point. But if these truly were as talented of players as you're saying they are, they should be able to have some form of creative freedom on the pitch to be able to break out of these systems if they see something. But the players, if they're truly talented, would do that anyway. We just saw Ronaldo do that, and it's past him. But he literally has ignored the coaching staff and just done whatever he wants for 90 minutes every single game. And if he was, if he still had the talent, he'd be able to. So he would have been able to take them all the way to the final, but he doesn't have the talent anymore. So these players still have the talent.
You're suggesting basically that the talented players are producing well for their clubs, but when it comes to the national team, they just don't bother.
No, I'm saying they're not necessarily producing for their clubs either.
Well, they are because.
All right. We're getting way off track here. I think this is the most heated discussion we've ever had on this show. So let us know what you think.
This is the most I've talked about European football. I don't like it. God, can we bring Can we have the A-League hurry up and come back? I'm getting sick of all this international European crap.
The bell has rung. We're going to call time on this one. That will do, finally, for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If any of you are still here. Thank you also to Deploy Football for sponsoring our show and supporting our coverage of the beautiful game. At least we like to think it's beautiful. Sometimes those kind of discussions don't lead it to that interpretation, but you never know. Christian Montegan, it's entertaining if nothing else.
It has a couple of heated debates, but yeah, it's been a pleasure as always.
Let's turn the cameras off and you can get that Spain shirt away from it.
The yellow card for you. It's a yellow card for Christian.
Doing props now, are we?
It's only because I had a sticky pad right here.
All
Where's
right.
the
Well,
whistle?
Jake. Yeah, jeez.
It's over there somewhere.
Jacob, if you're listening, I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully, put Mark on as well. But that's going to do it. Thank you all very much at home for listening again. We will be back on Friday. Remember, Olympic Women's Tournament full preview next Tuesday. But thank you all for now. Goodbye.